Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching fifth part of What If Naruko Was Blessed by a Lady of the Lake. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Haku was thrilled to see her mistress win the fight so easily and gracefully. She wore black shinobi pants and sandals with a blue long-sleeved turtleneck shirt. To show that she was a chunin, she also wore a blue Konoha headband in the standard flank jacket. She had just finished her shift at the hospital, and as she walked into the stadium, she caught the end of it. She saw Anko with Asuma and Kurenai in the stands and decided to join them. Haku smiled and said, "Hello." "Hey, Snow Girl," Anko said with a smile, "I'm glad you could finally join us." "Hello Haku-san," Kurenai said with a nod. "Yo," Asuma said as he always did. "I'm sorry, I just got off work at the hospital," Haku said to explain why she missed most of her mistress match. "You should have just skipped out and come," Anko said, rolling her eyes. Haku sighed at the way the woman was acting and said, "I have to take care of my patients, Anko-san." Anko just shrugged and said, "Well, whatever. At least now you can watch the rest of our Golden Girls matches." Haku smiled her usual smile and said, "Indeed." "Wow," said Ino in awe, "Naruko, she beat him up." Choji nodded as he ate more chips and said, "Yes, Naruko is very strong. She can play shogi just as well as Shika, and I even made a bet on her because most people were betting on that Hyuga guy." He smiled widely as he flattened the bag of chips and went to get another. "I made a lot of money on her." Sakura didn't say anything as the crowd kept cheering for her former teammate. She'd always wanted to be like the blonde. During their first graded exam at the academy, she thought she would get first place because of how smart she was. However, Naruko got first, and she got second. At the academy, when they had sparring matches, Naruko beat everyone without even trying. She had a growing crush on Sasuke, so it was only natural that she thought Naruko would go after him like every other girl. When she didn't, she asked why. The answer wasn't what she thought it would be. This is a look back in time. 7-year-old Sakura walked up to Naruko, who was sitting under a tree and reading a book. Naruko looked up from her book when she saw someone in front of her. "Can I help?" she asked in a slightly annoyed voice. Sakura put her hands on her hips and gave Naruko a mean look. "Why aren't you going after Sasuke-kun like all the other girls?" she asked. "Are you really asking me this?" Naruko asked with a raised eyebrow. "Yes." Naruko told the girl, "First of all, I'm 7, so I don't chase after boys. Second, he's not worth my time. Third, I think my goal of becoming a kunoichi is more important than a scared, emotional boy from a once great clan. Fourth, I just don't like him. Don't insult Sasuke-kun." Sakura yelled at the blonde as she charged at her like a fool. In just 1 second, Sakura's face hit the ground hard, and Naruko pushed her foot down on Sakura's head to push it even more into the ground. "You really are an idiot, aren't you?" Naruko asked rhetorically. "You are just a mindless little girl who follows the crowd, trying to get Prince Charming. Guess what? He isn't all that charming. You can see it in his eyes, you know. There is no love or warmth in them, just pure hatred and anger. You chase a pointless dream, fool. May you really get a wake-up call before you get yourself killed." Sakura just laid there and tried to figure out what had happened. The blonde's words hurt her a little, but after she found out that Sasuke liked girls with long hair, she forgot all about them. End of the memory. Sakura just now remembered what the blonde had said all those years ago, but she shook the memories out of her mind. Her Sasuke-kun wasn't like that at all. Naruko wasn't talking about anything, right? Hanabi couldn't believe that her cousin had lost. It was like the blonde kunoichi didn't care about him at all. Hiyashi was just as surprised as his daughter to see that his nephew never got a single hit. After seeing the older Hyuga boy get his behind kicked, Kiba's brain finally turned back on, and he let out a whistle. "Thank God it wasn't me," he said. While Hinata looked like she was in awe. Tenten gave her friend Naruko a big hug and told her, "Naru-chan, you did a great job." Tenten cheered. Lee agreed, "Yes, Naruko-san, your flames of youth were amazing." Shino gave her a silent nod to tell her he was happy for her, which she of course did the same for him. Shikamaru complained, "You are so troublesome, Naruko. You just had to set the bar that high. I might have to try now," but Naruko knew he was giving her a compliment. "Thank you, Shika." Naruko answered. The red-haired Jinchuriki smiled a bloodthirsty smile at Naruko, while his siblings looked at her with tired eyes. With the Kazekage and Hokage. Raida, the Hokage's personal guard, said, "Hokage-sama, Uchiha Sasuke hasn't shown up yet. What should we do?" Sarutobi frowned at this and said, "I've given that kid a lot of freedom. I told Kakashi that I wouldn't pull him out of the test, but that I would do this instead. Tell Genma that Uchiha Sasuke forfeits because he was late," the Sandaime said harshly. "That boy needs to learn that we are not at his beck and call just because he is from his clan." Raida nodded and used his headset to talk. "Hokage Dono, maybe you were being too harsh. Most of the nobles here today are looking forward to seeing the last Uchiha fight," the masked Kazekage said. The old Hokage said, "That boy has been spoiled enough by this village. It's time for him to learn that his actions have consequences." Sarutobi looked at him and shook his head. "But that's enough, Kazekage Dono." "You don't run my shinobi, I do," Sarutobi said in a cold voice. The Kazekage said, "Of course, Hokage Dono. I just wanted to see Uchiha Sasuke fight my son." On the inside, he was cursing. Genma said, "Because Uchiha Sasuke has been absent, he will have to forfeit from the third round." Even though people booed him, he didn't do anything about it. He thought, "Stupid-ass nobles," as he gave them the middle finger in his mind. A pink howler monkey yelled, "I can't believe they're making Sasuke-kun leave." "I know," said Ino to agree. "He was supposed to be here, so can you blame them?" Choji asked. So, Sakura said, "He's a Uchiha, so they can wait." Wow, that Tenten girl was right. You're so blinded by your crush that you can't tell right from wrong. You'd think that beating she gave you would have opened your eyes. It's kind of sad, really, Choji said as he ate a chip. Sakura's face turned red when she thought about how the girl with the bun hair beat her like she was nothing and made her feel bad in front of her Sasuke-kun. Anko joked, "Hey, Asuma, it looks like your old man got his balls back." Asuma nodded and said, "I think you're right." The doctor and the master of Genjutsu both shook their heads. Genma asked, "Will Aburame Shino and Sabaku no Kankuro come down?" "Proctor, I give up." Kankuro told the judge. "I can't reveal Karasu before the plan starts." "Alright, Aburame Shino is the winner because he didn't show up," Genma said. The crowd kept booing, even though 2 games in a row had already been called a forfeit. For match 4, will Sabaku no Tamari and Higurashi Tenten go down? Tenten smiled at Tamari as she jumped out of the booth and glided to the starting line with her fan. Tenten shook her head at her opponent's cocky behavior and started to walk down the stairs. As Tenten stood on the other side of her opponent and looked at her, she thought, "Okay, Tenten, just remember what you learned from Haku and you'll be fine." She had her hand ready on one of her summoning scrolls. Tamari said, "Get ready, little girl, to be blown away." "Bring it on, fangirl," Tenten teased. Temari's eye twitched when she heard that, and she would make her pay for what she had said. Genma jumped back and said, "Match 4, fight." Tenten jumped back and hit Tamari with 3 kunai. Tamari gave them a smirk and used her wind chakra to push them away. They fell near her. Even though the wind user didn't see Tenten smirk. "Kai." Tenten said. When Tamari heard her, his eyes got big. Tamari jumped back and used her fan to protect herself from the blast as the kunai blew up. As she came out of the explosion cloud, she had a few burns. "How did you do that without a bomb tag?" Tamari glared at Tenten. Tenten laughed and said, "That would be telling." She was remembering to thank Naruko for teaching her how to write an explosive tag seal formula on her weapons and sync it to her chakra signature so she could blow them up on command. Next, she threw about 12 shuriken. Tamari used her wind chakra again to push them away, and the shuriken went off. So she could avoid the explosion. The wind mistress glared at the girl with the buns, wondering how she was making them explode like that. Tenten said to the fan user, "Come on, you're a Futon expert, right? Start fighting back or this is going to get old fast." Tamari growled at her, opened her fan all the way, and then pulled it back. Kamaitachi no jutsu. she said as she sent a wave of wind at Tenten. Tenten shouted, "Kaiten, Gukakyu no Jutsu." The weapon master smiled because this was what she had been waiting for. She then made a quick series of hand gestures. Instead of making a ball of fire, she let out a stream of flames. The flamethrower got caught up in the Futen Jutsu, grew bigger, and was sent straight to Temari. Temari's eyes got bigger as she saw the hellfire coming and she tried to get out of the way as best she could. When the attack hit where she was before, there was a big explosion. Dust from the explosion made it hard for Temari to see, so she used a quick kamaitachi to attack Tenten and clear the dust at the same time. As soon as she pulled her fan back, it was stabbed. She was horrified to see Tenten holding a katana with the edge facing up and sticking it in her fan. Tenten yelled, "No more Futen Jutsu for you," as she pulled up with all her strength and cut the fan down the middle, making it useless. Then Tenten called up another katana and quickly turned around. She put her swords in a scissor shape around Temari's neck. Tenten said in a very serious tone, "Give up, fanless girl." She wasn't stupid, even though Temari gave her a murderous look. She put up her hand and said, "I lose," which Temari did not want to say. Higurashi Ten is the winner. Genma shouted. As Tenten walked back into the contestant booth, the crowd cheered, and Naruko gave her a congrats hug. Tenten said with a smile, "Naru-chan, have I ever told you that I love you?" Naruko took a moment to think, then nodded and said, "A few times, yes." Tenten said, "Well, I'll say it again, I love you, Naru-chan. I might have lost this one without your help." Naruko shook her head and said, "I don't think you needed my help to win. You could have done it on your own. I just gave you some tips to help you win a little faster." Lee was yelling about youth in the background, but Tenten just laughed at her friend. Genma asked, "Will Rock Lee and Nara Shikamaru come down?" Lee was so happy that he yelled and ran down. On the other hand, Shikamaru really didn't want to do this. Why? Why do I have to fight against the crazy guy? He thought, maybe I should just give up. Naruko said, "Shika, if you give up now, I'm going to tell your mother," as if she could read his mind. Shikamaru was shocked and went a little pale when he thought about his mother finding out. Can she now read minds? He thought. Naruko laughed as she looked at Shikamaru's horrified face and said, "Just yours." Shikamaru put his hands up to show that he was giving up. "Fine, you annoying woman, you win," he said as he started to walk down. He finally got there and saw Lee barely able to hold back his excitement. "Yosh. I hope for a match between two young people, Shikamaru-san," yelled Lee. Shikamaru looked at him and blinked, then turned to Naruko and asked, "Do I really have to fight this nut?" He thought, and Naruko nodded in a scary way. Seriously, that girl needs to stop whatever it is she's doing, like reading his mind. Shikamaru said, "Whatever," in a bored voice. Genma jumped back and said, "Okay, you two, match 5. Fight." Lee disappeared, and Shikamaru saw a fist come up to hit him in the face. The shadow user could only think of one thing. Crap. He was sent flying into the shaded part of the arena after the hit. Shikamaru quickly got better, and he spat out some blood when he felt his cut lip. Shikamaru made a rat hand sign as Lee went after him again. Lee was being chased by a shadow as he tried to get into the shaded part of the arena. Just as the shadow was about to catch him, Lee used a burst of speed to avoid the Nara clan's famous Kagemane no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, and get away. Lee realized that Shikamaru could use as many shadows as he wanted as long as he stayed in the shaded part of the arena. He thought about using the gates, but he thought that would be too mean to a friend. He might have to let go of his weights, but it's best to put that off for now. Lee decided to come up with some young ideas to help him win, so he got out a notepad and pen. Maida Guy was in the crowd, but he didn't yell at his student for doing something like that during a match. When his opponent pulled out a pad and pen in the middle of a fight, Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. He forgot about his opponent's tricks and put his hand in his back pouch. There, he felt some flash bombs. He'd have to put them away for now. He could only think of one way to beat his fast opponent, and that was to catch him and then give up. Well, he liked that idea. Lee bit the end of the pen as he thought of a way to get his opponent out of the dark part of the arena. He gave a frustrated grunt and put his notepad and pen back where they came from. He decided to not be careful and just use his speed to beat his opponent. He charged at his opponent again and went into the area with the shade. Shikamaru was already on him, and his shadow was racing toward him. Lee turned to the side and saw a shadow line coming up behind him. He backpedaled out of the shaded area and danced around the 3 shadow lines that were after him until he was far enough away to be safe. Shikamaru was panting. It was hard for him to do Kagemane no Jutsu so quickly after the last one. He had to catch his opponent soon or his chakra would run out. He had to stop this right away. He ran to the edge of the shaded area, pulled out 3 flash bombs, and threw them behind him. Lee was already on his way to him, but the flash bombs made him lose his sight. What Lee didn't see because he had his eyes closed was that Shikamaru's shadow had grown. The Nara made the sign for a rat, and Shikamaru's big shadow caught Lee. The young shinobi tried to get away, but he was stuck and couldn't move. Shikamaru walked up to Lee and thus Lee walked to Shikamaru. Lee was about to open the gates so that he could get out, but then the strangest thing happened. Shikamaru put his hand up in the air and said, "I give up," in a bored voice. Lee kept looking at him. Genma shook his head and said something about Nara being lazy. The referee said, "Winner Rock Lee." The crowd booed for the 3rd time because of how the game turned out. Shikamaru shook his head and walked toward the stands. Lee went back to the contestant booth in a bad mood because he was given the win. Now that we're in the semifinals, Genma asked, "Will Uzumaki Naruko and Sabaku no Gaara go down?" Naruko and Gaara walked down the stairs together to the floor of the arena. As they walked, Gaara said, "I will enjoy giving your mother your blood." Naruko laughed at him and shot back, "Well, I hope your mother is ready to be disappointed." As they finally got to their spots on the arena floor, Genma was about to start the match when the wind suddenly picked up between Gaara and Naruko and Kakashi and Sasuke appeared in a swirl of leaves. Sasuke looked like he was wearing a new black jumpsuit. "I hope we're not late," Kakashi said. Genma gave him a dirty look and said, "You're right." Hokage-sama was so angry that Uchiha was late that he made the kid give up. Sasuke's eyes got big, and he yelled, "What?" in anger. Genma gave him a mean look. "You thought you could show up whenever you wanted because you were from a clan. That's a good way to show that you're not ready to be a Chunin kid. So get off my arena floor and go watch the match from the stands or somewhere else." Sasuke was about to say something, but Kakashi grabbed his shoulder and squeezed it hard, making Sasuke wince. "Come on, Sasuke, let's go see what the other is doing." "Sorry for the trouble," he told the Uchiha. He told Genma he was sorry, and Genma just nodded. "Good luck in your match, Naruko. I'm sure you'll win," Kakashi said to the blonde with a smile in his eye. The blonde huffed at him and turned her head away. The man in the mask hurt inside. He knew she was mad at him, just as she was mad at Sasuke and Sakura, but he hoped things would get better with time. He will also try to make up with her later. Now, all he needed to know was how much ramen and maybe a few Raiden jutsus it would take. The 2 Sharingans went to the stands, and Genma coughed into his hand. Now that everyone is out of the way, semifinals, match 1. Fight. He shouted as he jumped back very far. He knew things would get messy in this one. Play. The battle is for the strong, Fate Zero Ost. Gaara sent a wave of sand at his fellow Jinchuriki right away, and Naruko turned her cart to the left, made a few hand signs, and said, "Suiten, Teppadama," as she shot several water bullets at Gaara. Gaara's sand naturally took the attack. This was how Naruko planned to deal with Gaara, so she laughed. If he added water to his sand, it would slow down, which would make him weaker. This was easy for her to do because she liked water so much. "Suiten, Mizurapa," Naruko said as she kept attacking with water. Gaara kept using his sand to block her attacks, but for some strange reason, it was getting harder for him to move it. Naruko made 20 seal less Mizu Bushin out of water and sent them at Gaara while she stayed far away. Gaara used his sand to easily destroy the water clones, which were only 1/1 as strong as the original. When they were destroyed, the water that was used to make them was absorbed into his sand. Gaara tried to move his sand while Naruko ran to her opponent with all of her backup. He finally figured out why he couldn't move his sand. All of Suiten's attacks were absorbed by his sand, making it heavier and making it hard for him to use it as well as he usually does. When his sand didn't work in time to protect him, Naruko's now powered-up fist hit him right in the face, sending the redhead flying. Gaara had a hard time getting up, and pieces of his sand armor fell off his face as he did. A layer of sand on top of that? So he also has a backup plan. Interesting. The blonde was thinking. Kyuubi stirred in his sleep, and when he woke up, he saw his ship fighting with the ship of that crazy raccoon. Let's see what you can do. Kyuubi thought about this because he was curious about how Naruko would do in her first fight with another Jinchuriki. Naruko ran at her opponent again, this time with 5 Mizu Bushins following her. As the blonde let 3 of the 5 water clones smash into her opponent's first defense, it exploded in a spray of water. The last 2 went for the redhead's second layer of defense, since the first one had already been broken and was falling apart because of all the water in the sand. As they hit Gaara's sand armor, they both vanished, and the water from their creation splashed onto the sand armor, making it easier for Naruko to hit the sand boy in the face with a powerful spin kick. Konoha Senpu. Gaara went flying again after the hit its mark. With the people in the room. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Anko hollered and clapped. Asuma smiled as he looked at the blonde. Haku was smiling as she watched her mistress fight her opponent with a lot of skill. Kurenai was smiling, too, because she could see that Naruko, at the rate she was going, could become the next Tsunade and be known as the strongest kunoichi. Kakashi and Sasuke were a little bit away from them. Who was sitting with Guy, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, and Sakura? Wow, Naruko is really smart to play this way. Kakashi gave praise. Sakura was confused, so she turned to her sensei, what's up with that? All Naruko is doing is using Suiten. I know she's good at it, but why is that a smart way to play? She questioned. Tell me, Sakura, Kakashi asked with a smile, what happens when sand gets wet? Sakura thought for a moment and then asked, is it getting stronger or heavier? Correct. And Naruko is doing just that. She is using Suiten to make Gaara's sand heavy and hard for him to move. This gives her an advantage. It really is a brilliant plan. Kakashi explained and then added something to it. Sasuke scowled at this because it wasn't something he would have thought of. It was just one more thing that made him hate Naruko. Well, that's Naruko for you. Shikamaru said this in a bored voice, but he had a small smile on his face. As he ate some chips, Choji gave a nod. She's so good that it's kind of scary. Ino stated. Except for Sasuke, all of the other genin agreed. Gaara stood up and made a sand dome around himself as he growled. What's on Gaara's mind? He'll make a change too soon. Temari's mind screamed. Oh no, this isn't going to work out, she said. In a panic, Kankuro thought. What does he do? When Naruko saw what looked like an eye flying above the sand dome, she thought. She made a cage bunshin and had it run at the dome. As soon as the clone got within 3 feet of the dome, sand spikes shot out of it and hit the clone, making it pop. He seems to be preparing for something, but what? While she looked up at the dome. Kit, that kid is trying to call Shukaku. Now, stop him. Through their mind link, Kyuubi told her. What? He needs to stop. She said, Raiden, Gion. As she fired a laser-like beam from her mouth at the dome. She had charged her mouth with lightning chakra and made a snake sign. The laser lightning bolt went through the dome, and she heard a sharp cry of pain like she had never heard before. She thought it was because he had never been hurt before. When Gaara got hurt, the other sand siblings were shocked. Gaara's sand dome fell, and he was holding his hurt shoulder and glaring at Naruko, who just looked at him without saying anything. At that moment, feathers started falling from the sky and putting people to sleep. Most of the Chunin and Jonin in the arena used Genjutsu, Kai to stop the sleeping Genjutsu from working. Kyuubi took care of it, so Naruko didn't have to worry about it. The last 2 sand siblings were right in front of Gaara at that moment, and their teacher was right in front of them a second later. Naruko was also jumped on by Genma. Can't you see that the plan is already in motion? Baki asked, reprimanding his students. It looks like our friends are breaking the agreement, Proctor-san. Naruko spoke up. Genma gave a small nod. Gaara fell to his knees and held his head in pain as he did so. What's the matter? Kankuro asked. Temari looked at her brother's wound and said, It's worse than I thought, and almost all of his chakra seems to be gone. She told him. So, what now? Asked the middle child. That fool tried to change before it was time. Baki said. But Gaara is needed for this. Kankuro said. Gaara is our best hope in this situation, and he has to do his job no matter what. Take him somewhere safe for now, and the operation will continue when his chakra is back to normal. The Suna-sensei gave the orders. Got it. Kankuro said as he put Gaara on his back and put his arm over his shoulder. How about you, teacher? Temari asked. I'll take care of these people. He replied. Are you sure this plan of yours will work? Genma asked the Suna-jonin a few questions. I will make sure it happens. Baki said something, then there was a long silence, and Baki yelled, Go. Gaara nodded, and the Sand siblings took him away. Is Orochimaru the host of this party? Genma asked. I have no idea and I don't care. Baki said. As you can see, Uzumaki, the Chunin exam is over, but you are already a Chunin, if not a Jonin. I need you to track them down. Genma told the blonde girl. It's not necessary to tell me. A Jinchuriki should fight another Jinchuriki, after all. Naruko spoke up. Baki's eyes went wide when he heard this. She's a Jinchuriki from Konoha, but which one? He realized that the only person who was known to have attacked Konoha was the Kyuubi. Naruko, seeing his stunned look, gave him a smile. I'm glad to see that someone in the group is a thinker. I'll be going to the doctor. You're not going anywhere. Baki yelled and threw a kunai at the blonde. Genma spat out the senbon he was chewing on and used the needle to knock the kunai out of the air. Go, I'll cover you. Genma said something, and the blonde nodded. Then, with a prana burst, she was gone. With Haku and the other characters. The Lancer Fate Zero Ost. Haku was able to stop the genjutsu from hurting her. She then pulled her spear out of her palm and added wind chakra to the tip, making it 2 meters long instead of 1. She jumped into the air, easily cut 3 auto nin who were coming at her, and landed softly on the ground. As she turned her spear around and took her position, the heads of the auto nin fell off. She turned around and stabbed a Suna nin who was coming at her from behind in the heart. She then pushed her ice chakra to the tip of the blade, and several ice spikes came out of him. Anko jumped up and hit an auto nin in the head with a kunai. Nice overkill, he said. As soon as she saw Haku move, the snake mistress said something. Thank you. The ice maiden said this as she twirled her spear in one hand and called up 3 senbon from the tiny storage seals between her fingers. She coated them with wind chakra and threw them, hitting 2 auto nin and 1 Suna nin right in the head and going right through their skulls. Asuma was punching and stabbing his enemies with his trench knives while Kurenai used genjutsu to hold them in place to help him. Haku saw Kakashi and Guy guarding some sleeping genin while Sasuke fought some auto nin and Sakura tried to get out of the way. Asuna nin threw a kunai with an explosive tag at the genin, and Haku was there in a second because her chakra burst to her feet. By throwing her hand up, she made a wall of ice, and the explosive kunai went off. After the dust settled, there wasn't much damage to the ice wall. She made a fist with her hand, and the ice shield broke. She then did a series of hand signs with just one hand, said, Futen, Daitapa, and blew into her hand. The broken ice shards went to a group of enemies and hurt them. She jumped into the middle of them as they were still reeling from her first move, stuck her spear into the ground, and did a handstand on top of it. Haya Ren, Ice Lotus. She yelled and sent her ice chakra to the tip of her spear. From the center, a big, beautiful ice lotus grew, which surrounded the group of enemies. She jumped up, took her spear with her, and whispered, Shatter, as she snapped her fingers. The enemy was inside the sculpture, and when it broke into 1,000 pieces, so did the enemy. Asuma whistled in amazement when he saw that move, and Kurenai looked dumbfounded. Anko couldn't help but laugh at how bad the move was. Haku jumped close to Kakashi as he stabbed a Suna nin in the heart. Thank you, Haku-san, for saving us. Kakashi said in gratitude. You're welcome, Kakashi-san. What do we need to do? Haku asked the shinobi who was in charge. Lee and Tenten jumped with her after the girl with the bun freed Tenten from the genjutsu. Naru-chan, where are you? With worry, Tenten asked. I saw her go after that Gaara character and his brother or sister, probably to stop them. Haku said. Well, Naruko should be able to deal with that Suna kid. Kakashi said. He turned to his only 2 students and said, I want you 2 to wake up the other genin and go defend the hospital and the civilian bunkers. This isn't a ranked mission, so split up. Kakashi ordered. Sasuke didn't look happy about this, but he did as he was told, and Sakura went with him. I should go help Naruko-sama by going with her. Haku suggested. Kakashi nodded. You were fast enough to catch up to her, so you were right. Kill some of the enemy along the way. He said. Haku nodded, and out of pure speed, he was gone. Guy, I'll leave your students to you. As he did a spin kick and heard his opponent's neck snap, Kakashi said, I'll show you. Guy nodded and told his students what to do. Kakashi looked in the direction Naruko was going and said, Naruko, please be careful. I don't think I could lose you the way I lost the others. Your only chance. He thought sad thoughts. With Naruko. Naruko was chasing after her targets when they suddenly stopped, and the puppeteer grabbed his puppet. Tamari, I'll handle her. You take Gaara and go. Kankuro ordered. Right. As she grabbed Gaara and ran away, Tamari said. Just you and me, Blondie. Kankuro said. I think someone else wants a shot at you, Naruko said with a smile. Naruko said. Shino showed up all of a sudden. So Shino, you want to play with him? Naruko asked. Indeed, Uzumaki-san. Move quickly, because I'll stop him. Shino said as he adjusted his sunglasses and his bugs began to swarm around him. Right, my friend, and come back alive. Naruko said as she ran forward, and Kankuro didn't even have time to stop her. Shino looked at Kankuro and said, okay, let's do this. Naruko kept running until she saw some big snakes she had called up attacking the walls of the village. She muttered curses and made a few cage bunshin, go. What to do is clear to you. She told them what to do, and they nodded and shushened to their destinations. The clones landed next to their targets and started making a series of hand signs. They clapped their hands, made the boar hand sign, and slammed their hands to the ground. A large seal array snaked to the snakes from beneath them. Uzumaki Fuin no Jutsu. The clone said, and the snake summons were sucked into the seal beneath them. Shinobi in the area were surprised that a little girl could beat those summons so quickly. Jiraiya landed next to one of the copies. Kid, you did a good job. Is that? He stopped talking, still a little shocked to see such a technique up close. The clone gave a nod. Yes, Jiraiya-sensei, that was the well-known way the Uzumaki sealed their doors. I need to show Naruko-sama that we did what we were supposed to do, so she can focus on the Suna Jinchuriki. Good morning. The clone said that she and the others just stopped being with Naruko. Naruko changed into her armor form in an instant to protect herself better for the fight she was about to start. Naruko saw her 2 targets and used prana burst to speed up to them. She kicked Tamari in the back, which made her drop Gaara, who landed on a branch, and the Wind Mistress landed on a branch a little ways away from him. Gaara grabbed his head in pain as sand started to cover half of his body and his arm turned into a sandclaw with a raccoon-like tail. Finally, his eyes turned yellow with a diamond-shaped iris in them. The Berserker, Fate Zero original soundtrack. Gaara, who had only partly changed, glared at Naruko and yelled, I will kill you to prove that I exist. Kyuubi, I need your chakra because I'm going to fight like a real Jinchuriki in front of him. Naruko said. Kyuubi smiled and thought, oh, this is going to be fun. The fox answered while sending her some of his chakra, which put her in the initial state. Naruko snarled as she went away, and when she came back, she was by Gaara's side and kicked his face into a tree. Gaara got up by using his sand arm to grab a nearby branch. He then threw himself quickly at the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, but Naruko dodged him and swiped one of her claws at his exposed arm, cutting the Ichibi host deeply. Gaara growled at her, and sand started to gather around his upper body. Naruko made and sent him 5 cage bunshin. Gaara had finished changing into his small Shukaku form. He took a deep breath and let it out, saying, Futon, Mugen Sajin Daitapa, Wind Release, Infinite Sand Cloud Great Breakthrough. Naruko made some hand signs and said, Futon, Daitapa. As she let out an overcharged gale that pushed her clones through Gaara's sand Daitapa and muttered, Kai. The clones that were headed for Gaara started to get blown away. Her copies turned out to be Bunch and Daibakuha and blew up between the two gales. Because Naruko's gale was stronger, the explosion went to Gaara. His sand form had protected him from most of the blast, so he only needed a small amount of his form to be fixed. Gaara attacked Naruko with a bunch of Suna's shuriken while he was in the middle of fixing himself. Naruko crossed her arms to block the attack, but she couldn't get away in time and took some damage because she didn't expect him to attack while he was fixing himself. Naruko growled, and a red form of chakra that looked like bubbles started to cover her. She had ears and a tail that looked like a fox's. Naruko suddenly vanished, ran into Gaara, and threw her arms forward at his flying form. She grabbed him with her chakra arms, smashed him through 5 trees, and whipped him into the air before slamming him into the ground. Gaara slapped his arms together several times and fired more Suna shuriken at the blonde, who now had red eyes. The blonde let out a Biju sonic roar, which broke up the sand shuriken. Gaara roared again, and a huge amount of sand came out of him. He changed into a huge sand tanuki. Is that a Shukaku? Naruko questioned Kyuubi. TCH, what a jerk. You can't call up my true form that way because you aren't strong enough to handle my hatred and bloodlust yet.
When you win, that's what we'll do next.
Kyuubi stated. I'm getting rid of your chakra right now. Naruko told her, and she went back to being herself. Gaara appeared on top of Shukaku's head and waved his arm in a wave of sand at Naruko. She knew she couldn't get away in time, so she had to rely on something she hadn't used in a real fight before. She sent prana to her fingertips, touched her chest, and pulled Avalon out of her body. She floated the sheath in front of her, made her hand into a fist, and said softly, Avalon, the ever-distant utopia, protect me in the world of the fairies themselves. She said this as Avalon broke up into pieces of gold and surrounded Naruko, just like the big wave of sand did. As Gaara crushed his fist to try to beat his enemy, he saw that the sand bounced back from where it was aimed and went around her instead of getting close. He was scared when he saw this, so he made the sign for a ram and said, Tanuki Niri no Jutsu. As soon as he did this move, he fell asleep, and it looked like Shukaku took over from there. As soon as Shukaku took charge, he began to laugh and jump around, I'm no longer a slave. And it looks like I can kill something as well. I'm so happy. The Tanuki said. The sand demon took a deep breath and said, Futen, Rankuden. As it let out a big blast of air that hit Naruko. Yeah, she's dead, she's dead. The sand demon began to jump around with joy. When the smoke cleared, all that was left was a big crater around Naruko, but there she stood, surrounded by gold dust and completely unharmed. What? Asked the sand demon, shocked. Enough, this needs to stop. Naruko shouted for Avalon to be safe. Play. 5 Mahu Sukai no Yuru BGM. Naruko let go of the invisible air boundary field around her sword, revealing the full beauty of the sword of promised victory. She let out her prana and got ready to kill this Biju in one hit. As she raised her weapon in the air, she began to pull energy from the earth itself into the tip of her blade. Alongside Nimue. The elemental was overjoyed to see that Naruko was about to begin her legend. Is that? The redhead's voice trailed off as she sat next to Karen and watched her relative fight another Jinchuriki. That sword is the dream of all warriors, past, present, and future, as their deaths get closer. A sad and lofty dream. Naruko carries their will as her pride, just like Arturia did, and she asks them to stay true to their loyalty. Now, just as the unbeatable king once sang, it is time for the child of prophecy to sing her own aria in honor of the miracle she holds in her hands. It's called With Naruko. The golden energy of her sword whirled around her and pulsed with power that was unimaginable. She tightened her legs as she moved forward 2 steps. She called out the name of her weapon as she swung down. Excalibur. The golden energy shot into the air and cut through the clouds as it came down on the sand demon. As soon as the blast hit the Biju, it turned into nothing, and Gaara was left lying on the ground, exhausted and wondering what had just happened. Naruko felt like collapsing after using Excalibur. But she went over to Gaara's body and put her sword in a position to strike. Gaara tried to move when he saw her coming, but he couldn't. No, no. I won't end here. I won't let you end my existence. He yelled very loudly. Naruko stopped for a moment and saw the way his green eyes were looking at her. It was a look of pain and loneliness, which was something she had felt a lot as a child. Was this why he was so crazy? He wasn't saved like she was he? She still held her sword and knelt down next to him while it was radiating. "Are you feeling pain?" she asked. Gaara did nothing but stare at her in fear. The hurt of being alone. "My fellow Jinchuriki, I know how you feel all too well. It's a curse we have to bear. Most people never wanted it, but we try to be as strong as we can to live through the pain that other people cause us and carry our burden." Gaara was shocked as he looked at her. "I once read that a Jinchuriki had to fill their Biju's vessel with love in order to control it, but most Jinchuriki never find that love. I have gotten it, though, and you can as well." She didn't know why she told him this, but she felt like she had something in common with the redhead. So that might be why. Gaara stared at her. "Is that what makes you so strong? Because you have ones you love?" He asked this because love felt strange to him. "Yes, I am strong because of that." Temari and Kankuro jumped down in front of the blonde Konoha nin at that very moment. "Don't hurt my brother. I won't let you." Temari yelled, and Kankuro was ready to strike with his puppet. Haku sped up and landed in front of her master with her spear ready to strike. "I'll say the same thing, because I won't let you hurt Naruko-sama," she said. As the temperature in the area dropped a bit, Haku said. Naruko just smiled at her loyal servant, and then she smiled at Gaara. "It looks like you already have people who love you."
Don't ever let them go, because they will give you happiness that most people can't have.
"Goodbye, until we meet again," Naruko said with a light bow, then turned around and started to walk away. Temari and Kankuro were about to attack the blonde, but Gaara wouldn't let them. "Enough already. Let's go home," Gaara said tiredly. The children nodded, picked up Gaara, and ran away. Temari. Kankuro. "I apologize," Gaara said to his siblings. Temari and Kankuro looked at each other in shock, but they nodded to him. "It's all right, we're siblings, so we have to stick together." With a small smile, Temari said. "Yes, that's right," Kankuro said in agreement. "Many thanks." Gaara spoke quietly. With Naruko and Haku. Naruko kept walking until she couldn't feel them anymore, then she dropped to her knees. "Naruko-sama." Haku was shocked as she dropped to her knees and put her master on her back. "I'm a little tired from using both of my noble phantasms, so Haku-chan, I'm going to need a nap. Please keep an eye on me," Naruko muttered. As she ran to the Senju compound, Haku nodded and said, "Take a break, Naruko-sama. You deserve it." Naruko nodded and smiled as she closed her eyes. Naruko was sitting on the deck of her backyard in her home, wearing a golden kimono with a lily pattern and an ocean blue obi. She was in a pretty sad mood as she watched the rainfall. Jiraiya was playing shogi with Karen, who had just moved into her permanent home. To Jiraiya's surprise, Karen was also winning. Haku was reading quietly while occasionally looking at the match between her new mistress and her lady's new sensei. Naruko sighed as she went back in her mind to the funeral of Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage. Even though he caused most of her problems by telling everyone about her, he was the only person who tried to help her when she was young. She did have a lot of respect for the man, and she was very sad when he died, but he died as any Hokage would, to protect the village. Naruko asked Jiraiya-sensei, who will be the next Hokage? With a hint of curiosity. She needed to know how this person, whoever it was, would affect her status in the village. Jiraiya knew he was going to lose, so he turned his head so that his long ponytail would hit the board, knocking the pieces over, and then he spoke to her. Karen yelled in anger, "Hey, you liar. You did that on purpose." Jiraiya told her to stop when she got angry and tried to pick up the piece and put it back where it was. The wise man said, "I'm not sure. There are a few people, but we'll have to wait and see." The gate knocked, and the alert seal on it let them know. Haku got up, put her book on the floor, and went outside to see who had come to see her. Haku was shocked to see the village elders and Danzo when she opened the gate. Haku gave a short nod and said, "Hello, elders, Shimura-san." Homura said as he adjusted his glasses, "We think Jiraiya-kun is here, and we want to talk to Uzumaki-kun about how she did on the exam and during the invasion." Haku nodded, then led them inside. Naruko turned her head and was surprised to see the elders and Danzo come into her home. She thought the main reason was to see Jiraiya. Jiraiya was looking for the elders, but Danzo was also there. Haku made tea for everyone, and she and Karen sat in the corner of the room to stay out of the way. Koharu decided to begin by saying, "Jiraiya-kun, we need to talk about who will be the next Hokage, and since you are the only one here, we'll start with you." Jiraiya cut her off by saying, "That's not going to happen." "Jiraiya-kun, see reason," Homura said. "You're forgetting that there's someone else who's even better suited for the job." Koharu was shocked and asked, "You can't mean her, can you?" Jiraiya nodded, "Yep. She's been gone from the village for too long, and we know she won't come back," Danzo said with a snort. Jiraiya gave him a hard look and said, "Well, name someone who would be better than her." Danzo said nothing. Jiraiya said, "I thought so. I'll go get her in the morning." "Very well, by morning we'll have an ambush squad for you," Homura said. "No, they'll only slow me down," Jiraiya told him. "At least take Kakashi-kun with you," Koharu said. Jiraiya shook his head. "No, I'm thinking of someone else," he said to Naruko with a smile. Naruko asked her sensei, "May I know who we're looking for?" With a raised eyebrow. "Of course, my old teammate Senju Tsunade," he said. Naruko nodded. "Yes, bringing me with you would be helpful because our relationship, and it would show her that even though most of her family has died, she still has family because Mito Oba-sama is her grandmother and my great-great-grandaunt," the blonde said. Jiraiya nodded, but he also knew that Naruko was the only one who could pull Tsunade out of her funk. Because they knew each other, Koharu and Homura agreed that it might work. "It would also be smart to bring Karen-chan with us because of her ability to sense things. This would make it easier to find someone with cage-level chakra," Naruko said. When Karen thought about meeting someone like Tsunade and remembering that they were also distantly related, she got stars in her eyes. It was going to be great. The elders also agreed with this, since the meeting between the red-haired Uzumaki and the Sandaime was interesting because of how well she could feel things. "Uzumaki-san, may I ask why you used so much power against the Ichibi Jinchuriki all of a sudden?" Danzo asked with interest in his voice. After that question, no more was said about Tsunade. Jiraiya also wanted to say something about that, but she wanted to wait until they were moving. As he thought about how that tower of light hit the Ichibi in the distance and how that same light erupted in the sky, he realized that the war was over. Everyone, including Konoha, Suna, and Ado, just stood there and stared at the light. After seeing that the Ichibi had been defeated, most of the Suna nin ran away, and the Ado nin were easy to beat because they didn't have any help from their allies who had run away. Danzo seemed to have other ideas. "What I did is something that only I can do," she said in a mysterious way. He asked again, "Yes, but what was it?" Naruko smiled at him and said, "The power of a king." Once again, her answer was not clear. Danzo frowned and didn't ask any more questions, knowing that the blonde would probably keep answering in a mysterious way. "Yes, Uzumaki-kun, you did very well on the exam. Usually, the Hokage gives out promotions to Chunin rank, but since it was clear you were one from the exam, congratulations on becoming Chunin, even though it's not official," Homura told her as he gave her a sealing scroll with a flank jacket inside. Naruko nodded and smiled. "Thank you, and I'll keep doing my best," she said with real enthusiasm in her voice. Jiraiya smiled and ruffled her hair, which made Naruko sad. "Good job, Gaki, I saw your match and it was really impressive," he said. Naruko smiled softly at him and whispered, "Thank you, Jiraiya-sensei." Haku and Karen also congratulated her, and the two Uzumaki went to their rooms to get ready for their new mission as Haku followed them. Also gone were the elders and Danzo, and Jiraiya said that they would leave in the morning and meet at the front gate. Naruko had a big smile on her face as she thought, "Senju Tsunade. I hope our meeting will be wonderful." She really was in for a shock. The front gate to Konoha. Naruko and Karen were walking to the gate to meet Jiraiya, but they had some extra stuff with them or were hugging Naruko's leg. Tenten yelled from the ground, "Take me with you." Both of them went to Tenten's shop to get more weapons and new clothes for Karen. The short-haired redhead was wearing a black skirt with long black stockings up to her thighs and black shinobi sandals. She also had on a pair of black gloves, a navy long-sleeve shirt, a brown short-sleeve jacket with an Uzumaki swirl on the back, and a Konoha headband made of a blue cloth on her head. When they said they were going on a search mission and Karen said they were going to find Tsunade, Tenten's idol, the girl with the bun hair grabbed Naruko's leg and wouldn't let go. This was a mission the elders gave Karen-chan, me, and Jiraiya-sensei Ten-chan, Naruko said as she kept walking without much trouble with the extra weight on her leg and gave Karen a light glare for saying the mission parameters. Karen just looked like she was sorry to her relative for making a mistake. Tenten complained, but he wouldn't let go. They finally got to the gate, and when Jiraiya saw the girl holding on to one of his students' legs, he raised an eyebrow. He asked in jest, "Is there something you're not telling me?" Naruko sighed. "Ten-chan Jiraiya is my best friend, Jiraiya-sensei Tenten," she said as she introduced them. Tenten said, "Hello, Jiraiya-sama," while still holding on to the blonde's leg. "Hi to you, too. Could you please let go of the leg of one of my students now?" he asked, putting his hands on his hips. Tenten whined again, "But I want to meet Tsunade-sama." Jiraiya looked at Naruko to see if she could explain more. The blonde said, "Tsunade has been 10 idol-chans since we were kids." Jiraiya nodded. "Oh, I see. You know, the sooner we leave, the sooner we can get her back so you can meet her. I'm sure if you let Naruko go, I can set up a meeting between the two of you," he joked. After giving it some thought, Tenten reluctantly agreed and let go of Naruko. "Bye, Ten-chan. Watch Haku-chan for me while I'm gone. See you soon," Naruko said as she waved goodbye to Tenten from the gate. Karen gave the friend of her relatives a wave and then joined Naruko and Jiraiya in following Jiraiya.
Back on the road.
As they walked down the dirt road toward their destination, Karen asked a few questions. Karen asked, "So, why did you choose Naruko as your apprentice?" She was using her Kagura Shingen, mind's eye of the Kagura, to see if he was lying. Jiraiya hummed for a moment and then said, "To be honest, I see a lot of my old student in her." He started to say more, but Naruko stopped him with a growl. "Don't compare me to that man," the blonde had snarled at the other man. When Naruko said that, Karen could feel sadness coming from Jiraiya's chakra, but he stayed calm. Jiraiya said in a whisper, "I only say that because of how talented you were, Gaki." He continued, "You can hate him as much as you want, but the way you're going, you have the potential to beat him. And I'm going to help you." Naruko huffed and said, "I swore on my sword I'd be better than him by now, and I plan to be," as she walked ahead of the group to calm down. Jiraiya sighed and said, "Great." Karen told him in a whisper, "She'll calm down soon." Jiraiya gave her a half smile and a nod in response to the redhead's help in getting his new student to understand. "So what is Tsunade-sama like?" Karen asked in interest. "Well, she is by far one of the most powerful and beautiful kunoichi you'll ever meet, and she's known as the legendary sucker," he said, and a kunai flew at his head, which he caught. "Now, Gaki, don't throw sharp objects at your sensei outside of practice," he told him lightly. Naruko just looked at him blankly. "Call one of my relatives by such a dirty name again, and you'll have to worry about more than just a kunai," the blonde said in a flat tone. Jiraiya thought for a moment and then laughed. "Sorry, that was just a nickname she got because she was so bad at gambling, Gaki. And besides, if I said something like that to her, she would kill me in an instant," he whispered at the end of his sentence. "Really?" asked Karen, tilting her head to the side to show that she had heard him. Jiraiya shivered a little and said, "There's no doubt that Haim has a terrible temper." As she joined the group, Naruko joked, "Then she and Karen-chan will probably get along great." Karen yelled in anger, "What was that?" Naruko just pointed at her and said with a crooked smile, "My point in full bloom." Karen folded her arms and pouted as she said, "If you weren't such a powerhouse, I'd kick your ass." "Don't worry," Naruko patted her on the head, "you'll be a good sparring partner soon." Karen pouted even more because Naruko was still making fun of her. Jiraiya laughed at the way the family talked to each other, since he had only met them a month before and they were already so in sync.
He thought it must be a girl thing.
As the group walked through a post office, they went into a small hotel. Jiraiya saw a pretty black-haired girl wink at him, which made him smile silly. "Hey, kids, why don't you go to your room and all? Meet you later?" Naruko sighed and said, "Remember that we are on a mission, so come back soon." She and Karen then went to their room to relax for a while. After sitting for a while, Karen jumped up in surprise. Naruko looked at her relative and asked, "What?" with some worry in her voice. The redhead said with some fear, "2 cage-level chakra signatures just came into town and are speeding toward us." The blonde said, "Do you mean here?" as she pointed to the floor to show where their room was. Karen nodded her head yes. Naruko said, "Go find Jiraiya-sensei, I'll wait here," as she pulled out some scrolls she was carrying and looked at them. But Karen started to say, but Naruko stopped her by putting a finger to her lips. "You are my family. Because of your senses, you can find sensei faster and bring him here faster. I have more experience fighting S-class shinobi because of my training with Jiraiya-sensei, so go," Naruko said when she was done. Karen said, "Yes," then jumped out the window to find Sanin, who had white hair. Naruko took a deep breath to calm down, then checked her gear and got ready. She had to wonder what they were up to. Taking an Uzumaki prisoner and letting her start a new clan in a different village could be a reason. Killing her before she became a bigger threat could also be a reason. Or were they looking for Jiraiya? She thought about these and many other things until she heard someone at the door. "Coming," she said. Then she made a single hand sign with her hand and jumped out the window. "Katsu," she said in a whisper. She had put a stronger seal on the door and put explosive tags on each corner, so she could fire the door like a cannonball and it would survive the force of the blast. She hoped this would slow down her new friends for a few seconds. As soon as she hit the ground, she started jumping from roof to roof and went into the forest near the post station so she could use more of her attacks that affected a large area. She was sure Karen could find her, and maybe the noise of her attacks would also help. "Who are we up against?" Kyuubi asked with a bit of excitement when he woke up and felt her pain. "2 shinobi at the cage level," Naruko said as she looked around. Kyuubi grinned wildly and said, "Great. And since we're in a forest, I guess you'll let me play outside?" "If it all comes down to it, yes," she said. "Hello, Naruko-chan," said a smooth voice that filled the air. Naruko turned around to see who she was facing. When she saw her opponent's eyes, which were red and had 3 tomos in them, her eyes grew wide. Kyuubi also knew who they were and growled at them. "Uchiha, Uchiha." They both thought, but Kyuubi was thrashing around in her mindscape because she saw those eyes and was angry about it. "Uchiha Itachi," Naruko said in a dull voice. "What do you want with me? If you're the only Uchiha I might be able to stand, unlike that weak brother of yours." "It looks like you have a fan, Itachi-sama," a deeper voice said from Naruko's left side. Naruko turned her head and saw a man with blue skin who looked like a fish and was carrying a big bundle that was wrapped in bandages. Both of them looked like they were wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. "Hoshigaki Kisame, Kirigakure no Kaijin, monster hidden in the mist, an Oo Motenai Biju, tailless beast, wielder of the famous sword Samahata," Naruko said. Kisame said with a deep laugh, "Oh ho, it looks like we've got a smart one here in Itachi-san. I just like to read the bigger for my britches part of the bingo book so I can use it as a reference in the future when I want to fight people like you, gentlemen," Naruko said in a funny way. Kisame laughed at the line about gentlemen. Itachi said, "Your little door trick was interesting, Naruko-chan, but we need you to come with us." Naruko called up Kabikari Hucho and stood guard with it. Kisame blew a whistle and asked with great interest, "Kabikari Hucho? Did that weakling Zabuza-chan lose to a little genin? He said he was impressed by my kenjutsu skills and gave it to me before he died a shinobi's death," Naruko said, trying to buy time. "I'm a chunin, just so you know," she added. Kisame asked Itachi-sensei, "Hey, can I fight her? I want to see what Zabuza-chan liked about her." Itachi sighed and said, "Try not to play with her for too long, and make sure to keep her alive." Kisame just told him to go away as he took Samahata off of his back. Naruko turned halfway to face Kisame, but she still kept her guard up in case Itachi decided to join in. She took a deep breath and let go of her gravity seals. She then strengthened her body to the max and filled it with chakra to make it stronger, since she was going to need it. And Karen. Karen was wearing her Kagura Shingen, and she found Jiraiya with his girlfriend. She looked at the woman for a moment and then felt that she was surrounded by genjutsu. "Jiraiya-sama, 2 cage-level shinobi have come to town and are fighting Naruko. That lady is also under a genjutsu," shouted the redhead as she used a genjutsu kai on the woman, who fell asleep right away. Jiraiya swore loudly and grabbed Karen by the waist to carry her. Where? He asked the censor, and Karen pointed to the edge of town. Jiraiya said, yes, and ran as quickly as he could. With Naruko. Naruko jumped over Kisame and slashed down with her head cleaver sword, hitting the shark skin with enough force to send out a shockwave. Kisame grabbed her leg while she was in the air and threw her into a tree, but Naruko regained her balance in midair and landed on the tree, breaking it. Naruko used prana burst to push herself off the tree, which broke the tree. She then shot toward Kisame like a blue bullet, and the force of their blows caused another shockwave. They couldn't agree on anything, so Naruko glared at the shark man and Kisame gave her a huge grin. The swordsman said, "You are a good girl. If you were from Kiri, I would have loved to have you as an apprentice." Naruko said. Zabuza said the same thing. Of course he would have. You're a gem in Kenjutsu, Kisame said as he pushed forward. Naruko turned around the push and went to cut Kisami's legs, but Kisame jumped over it and slammed his sword into his target, who was on the ground. Naruko rolled out of the way just in time, as Kisame made a decent-sized crater from his attack. Before she could catch her breath, Kisame was already on top of her and trying to hit her with another powerful blow. She blocked it with the cleaver and felt the blow make a crater under her. She did a quick prana burst to get some distance and saw Kisame just grinning at her and waiting for her to move, like a shark watching its prey. "Let me out. Let me kill that savage with the monkey eyes," Kyuubi said to herself. "I can't. Samahata is a sword that has feelings and eats chakra. A great weapon to use against a Jinchurikia, almost too good, but wait. Are you looking for Kyuubi?" she asked. Kisame laughed and said, "How did you know?" Naruko said, "Since the Sharingan can stop a Biju's chakra and your sword can eat chakra, these are the best tools to catch or beat a Jinchuriki and their Biju." Kisame laughed and said, "That's for sure a smarty." "Yes, she is very smart to figure that out based on the Sharingan and Samahata," Itachi said with a bit of praise in his voice. Kushina-san would definitely be proud. That stopped Naruko from going after Kisame, and she looked at Itachi in shock. "How did you," she started to say, but Itachi stopped her. The Uchiha said, "Our mothers were actually friends. I had met her a few times when I was a child. She was very tomboyish, but she was a kind woman and a powerful kunoichi in her own right." Naruko asked with a glare, "If they were friends, why didn't she look out for me?" Itachi just gave a careless shrug and said, "Who knows?" Naruko just gave him a dirty look because he didn't answer her. Kisame yelled, "Hey, we're done here." But no one paid attention to him. Itachi was such a killjoy for messing with the Gaki's head and ruining his fun. "Itachi," a loud voice said. When they turned around, they saw Sasuke gasping for air and giving the older Uchiha a murderous look. "He kind of looks like you, Itachi-san." "Who is he?" Kisame asked with a little bit of interest. Itachi sighed indifferently and replied, "My little brother." "Oh, I heard you kept one alive." "So that's him, huh? He doesn't look like much, does he?" asked the fishman. "I wonder how he found us." Naruko said, "He's not, and he probably followed the sound of the shockwaves we were making when we were fighting." He nodded to show that he understood. "Well, I guess we were kind of loud," he said. "You don't like the duck butt Gaki?" Kisame asked with a funny grin. "He always thought he was the best, but I beat him every time in the academy," Naruko said with a huff. "Ryo says he charges at Itachi like an idiot." "No genin is that stupid," Kisame said with a snort. "He is, trust me," Naruko said, reassuring him. Kisame said, "Deal." He knew that the kid would have to have brain damage to charge head-on at an S-ranked nuke nin. "I've hated you and sworn to kill you my whole life. Feel my hatred, Itachi." Sasuke yelled as he ran at Itachi with a kunai in his hand. Kisami's mouth opened wide when he saw how stupid the kids were. He muttered angrily, looked in his pockets, and gave the blonde $5. "Ryo." As she counted the money, the blonde just smiled and said, "Don't bet against an Uzumaki." Kisame said, yeah, sad that he had lost his snack money. As he ran toward Itachi, Sasuke yelled, "Ah!" The older brother quickly grabbed Sasuke's wrist and broke it. Sasuke wailed out of pain. The older Uchiha said, "Go away, Sasuke. You're not interesting to me." Itachi then threw Sasuke right into a tree, which made the young Uchiha cough up blood. Itachi grabbed him by the throat and pushed him deeper into the tree before he could even touch the ground. He whispered to Sasuke, who was almost out of it, "You are weak, lil brother. Do you know why? Because you don't hate." Itachi muttered, "Tsukuyomi," as his Sharingan took the shape of a pinwheel and looked right into Sasuke's eyes, showing him the horrible things he did the night he killed their clan. Sasuke screamed in fear as he lost consciousness. Kisame gave a low whistle and said, "Geez, Itachi-san, using that jutsu on family and twice in one day, damn." He then turned to Naruko and asked, "Why didn't you help your fellow shinobi, girly? I thought you Konoha shinobi were all about that?" Naruko shrugged. "The little fool decided to attack him, but that's not my problem. Besides, you would have stopped me anyway, right?" she asked the fishman. "True, very true," Kisame said with a laugh. Naruko said with a smirk, "Kitty gloves are off now, though." Kisame said, "Oh, you were keeping something from me? That's not very nice." Naruko's armor was gold, and she had her Zanbatu sealed while she called up her noble phantasm, which was covered in invisible air. This made Kisame raise an eyebrow. She must have thought she was a knight. He wondered. Naruko said as she ran at him, "I am Konoha's Saber, get ready." Kisame smiled and shouted back, "Saber? Let's see what you can do." As he raised his sword into the air. Naruko yelled, "Ah!" as she went for a horizontal cut. Their swords hit each other, and then there was a screech. Samahata yelled as its bandages tore off, revealing a scaly surface with a mouth at the top. It then moved away from the invisible weapon. Kisame jumped back in shock and said, "What the hell?" Samahata moved around to get as far away from Naruko as it could. What the heck? Why does his sword feel so scared? It came into contact with invisible air, which is a boundary field made of prana. That's it. It can't handle prana. She thought, "I have a chance," as she ran at the fishman again. What is the matter with Samahata? What the hell is that thing that's making it stick out like this? When Kisame saw the blonde coming at him, he pulled out a kunai and tried to block the invisible sword. He put the shark skin back on his back. He tried, but it didn't work because she cut his arm. Oh, he was so mad. He was hit by a genin, no, a chunin, because he was known. He jumped back and made a series of hand signs. Water release. Water shark bullet technique. Kisame shouted as he fired the water shark at Naruko, who was coming at him again. Naruko laughed as she ran right into the shark. As soon as she touched it, it sprang back into the water, and she kept running toward Kisame. The fishman threw a bunch of kunai at her quickly, and she stopped in the middle of her run to deflect them all. Kisame took advantage of her stop to get behind her and go for a punch. Before the swordsman could hit, he jumped out of the way as a red and white blur drop kicked where he had been, making a small crater. The Sannin yelled, "Karen, now!" And a blur of blue and red flew through the air toward Itachi. The Uchiha dodged the attack, but he wasn't the intended target. The blue thing picked up Sasuke and flew over the trees. There was Karen on the back of a blue eagle with artistic designs on it. She had 5 wires coming out of one gloved hand and was holding Sasuke by the collar of his jumpsuit. The redhead glared at them with her ruby red eyes, and as she dropped Sasuke on the ground, she flew back next to Jiraiya. She flexed her hand, and the wire structure fell apart, leaving just the wires. With a flick of her fingers, the wires turned into 5 small eagles, and the wires on her other hand were already ready to be used. Naruko told them, "About time," as she stood behind the Sannin but kept her guard up. Karen said, "Sorry," in a sarcastic way. "Guess what? What I heard was true. Your Akatsuki group is after Naruko, which is a big mistake," Jiraiya said in a serious voice. When she heard this, Naruko's eyes narrowed. Itachi turned to Kisame and said, "It looks like you were the one who told Kakashi about us." "I should have guessed. The odds aren't in our favor, we're leaving," the Uchiha said. The sage said out loud, "No way. Kuchiyose. Gamaguchi Shibari, summoning, toad mouth bind." Before they knew it, they were all inside a strange pink substance that looked like flesh. "Welcome to the fire-breathing toad's stomach on Mount Mayuboku. You're stuck," Jiraiya told the nuclear ninja. Karen said, "Ew," and gave a slight shiver as she looked at the jutsu. Whether or not it worked, she thought it was gross to be inside a toad. The enemy ran to the far wall of the jutsu, and Itachi muttered something as his Sharingan changed back into a pinwheel pattern. "Amaterasu," he said. Then, black flames broke out on the fleshy wall and burned it down, letting them get away. "What in the name of Akasha?" Naruko muttered to himself as he walked up to the flames and watched as her armor broke up into pieces of gold. Before he saw what she was doing, Jiraiya was about to tell her to stay away from it. Naruko took a blank scroll out of the pouch on her hip and opened it at the same time. She brought it in front of her and started writing a seal array while it was still in the air. She put it on the ground and slammed her hand on it. She shouted, "Fuin, seal." As she did the FKA hin, fire sealing method, and the black flames went into the scroll, leaving the kanji for black fire on it. She rolled up the scroll and put it in her pouch, then turned to Jiraiya and asked, "When was I going to find out that a group of Nuke Nin are after Kyuubi, aka me?" She asked with her hands on her hips and a straight face. Jiraiya was so impressed by how easily she sealed that he shook his head and said, "I was doing my usual spy work when I heard that a group of S-ranked Nuke Nin were getting together and going after the Biju. I did some research and found out they've been around for a while. How many do we know they have?" Naruko answered in a whisper, and her voice showed a little bit of fear. After all, people who wanted the Biju for who knows what were hunting her like an animal. Not just her, but also other people like her, which made her very angry. Jiraiya shook his head. "We Jinchuriki have to be hurt even more, of course. I guess that's just how this violent world works." She thought sad thoughts. Karen walked up to her and gave her a light hug, which the blonde gave back. "Jiraiya-sama." Guy yelled as he ran toward the rest of the group. "Thank goodness everyone is okay. Back in Konoha, we ran into Uchiha Itachi and his most old partner. They said that Naruko-chan was their target." As he looked at the blonde, who was still being held by her family member, he said, "It looks like she'll be okay, though." If something had happened to Tenten, she would have been very upset. As he turned back to Jiraiya, the taijutsu master said to the sage, "Young Sasuke came after you when he heard that Itachi was looking for her. Do you know where he is?" Jiraiya pointed at the young Uchiha on the ground and said, "Take him back to Konoha and straight to the hospital. It looks like Itachi hit him with something bad." He, or she, said. Guy nodded and put Sasuke on his back. "I will," he said. "May your youth burn brightly." Bowl Cut Shinobi yelled as he ran with Sasuke back to Konoha. "Let's go somewhere." The girls nodded and followed what Jiraiya said. They walked to the next town and saw a festival happening there. When Naruko saw all the lights and food and game stands, her face lit up like a child's. Jiraiya laughed when he saw her face look so innocent for the first time since he'd met her. "Why don't you girls go have some fun?" he said. He suggested. Naruko stopped when she realized she had let her mask fall. She quickly huffed and turned her head to the side while saying, I guess so." She said it while her cheeks were a little red. Jiraiya and Karen both sweated because they could see that she was trying not to look interested, but she was. "Wonderful. I have a student who is a tsundere." Jiraiya's face palmed as he thought this. "Well, whatever. Show me your wallet," Jiraiya said. Naruko raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why?" "Because it's my job as your sensei to make sure you don't give in to the 3 shinobi taboos that money can lead to." "Such as what?" She took risks, and she rarely spent her money unless she needed supplies or wanted to buy something she thought was cute. But there was no way she would say that to anyone. "Drinking, betting, and women." Jiraiya's answer came out like he had practiced it. "I don't like alcohol, I always win when I gamble, and I don't gamble very often. Also, I'm a girl," Naruko said plainly. "Just let me see it." Jiraiya said this as Naruko told him the truth about the taboos. His eye twitched. Naruko took out her lion-shaped plush wallet, which she called Shishi-chan because it had a little crown on its head, lion. "Nice purse." The wise person said something funny. Naruko got red in the face and told him to shut up. She muttered that she liked her wallet. It was shaped like her favorite animal, and the crown she put on it made it even cuter in her eyes. Jiraiya went to grab it, but electricity shocked him instead. He yelped and pulled his hand away. "What's going on? Who puts a bomb in their wallet?" he asked as he shook his hand to make it feel better. "If you're me, you do." Naruko gave a simple answer. How on earth did you do that? He was interested, but he was careful not to touch it again because he didn't want to get another shock. Naruko smirked at him, so I wouldn't get shocked too. I redesigned a shock seal and synced it to my chakra signature. I later added the signatures of Ten-chan, Haku-chan, and Karen-chan as well. What she told him. Damn, I have to spend my own money now, I said. Alright, have fun, the Sannin thought with a sad face. As he walked into the crowd, he said. Let's go. Naruko said as she ran around the festival holding Karen's arm. As they ate and played, the girls went to the different stands. Naruko won a big lion plush that she was determined to get, and Karen kept laughing at her as she carried it on her back with the plushie's head on top of hers. They were walking through town when they heard a cocky laugh coming from a building. They saw Jiraiya drinking with two women and laughing in a tavern. Hypocrite. Both Naruko and Karen were sweating as they thought. Jiraiya-sensei? Naruko asked with a bit of disgust that she once again had a pervert for a teacher. Oh, Naruko-Karen, how's it going? When he saw the prize Naruko was carrying, he asked with a smile. One of the girls asked, who are they, Jiraiya-sama? The blonde is a student of mine, and the redhead is a relative of hers. They are helping me with a mission. What kind of mission is that? The other girl asked in a flirtatious way. Now, I can't tell you that. He said. The girls did nothing but pout at him. We're going to the hotel. We'll see you in the morning. Karen said as she picked up Naruko and left. The next day. The group got up and started walking away, but Jiraiya stopped at the edge of town. He put down the bag he was carrying and looked at Naruko. Alright, I'll show you a new jutsu. Jiraiya said this in a very serious way. What jutsu? Naruko asked with a smile. This is the Rasengan, Jiraiya said as a blue spinning orb appeared in his hand. He just said. Just on time, Naruko glared at him. You want me to copy what he does? His favorite move. She yelled at him, never. I'm willing to learn from his sensei, but I won't learn his technique. She said to show her anger. He just gave her a smile. He knew this would happen, and now he had to use her pride and desire to beat Minato against her. Well, he only got half of this jutsu done. He never figured out what the other half was. He said slyly. Hey, if it took Minato's name getting hit a couple of times for the girl to learn and use her birthright, then he would reluctantly do it. He saw that she was getting shaky, so he went for the final blow. I mean, if he couldn't finish it, you probably won't be able to either, he said. With a shrug, he said. He loved hearing Naruko's growl at him for underestimating her. Okay, I'll figure it out and do what he couldn't. What should I do first? She asked with a strong voice. Jiraiya grinned at her. First step, he said as he pulled a water balloon from his bag. You have to pop this with just your chakra, like this. He said this as the balloon got bumpy and then burst. He threw it to her, and she caught it. Your turn, he said. As he looked at her, he said. Naruko held the balloon in her hand as she put chakra into the ball and made the chakra move in different directions. After a few seconds, it went pop. Jiraiya cursed again that his daughter had inherited the genius gene from Minato. Okay, the next step is power. This is much harder than the first step. You have to use only your chakra to pop this rubber ball. As he threw it at her, he said. Naruko caught it and pumped her chakra into the rubber ball. She did the same thing she had done before, and the air leaked out of the ball through a small hole. This made Naruko frown, so he took another ball out of his pack and sat down to think. Thank Kami-sama. If she got the second step right on the first try, I'd probably have a seizure. He felt better, he thought. I sort of feel left out. As he sat down for a minute to watch Naruko work on the second step, Karen told him. Jiraiya looked at the redhead and said, wow, what you did with those wires was pretty cool. He said that he had never seen anyone use wires that way before. He was sure that if he asked, the same thing would happen as when he asked Naruko about her sword. Thanks, I found an Uzumaki scroll that taught me that. It seemed interesting, and it fits with how I think and feel. As she watched Naruko make a bigger hole in the rubber ball, Karen said with a small smile. Like a bird's eye view. Jiraiya joked with a hearty laugh. Yay. But I want to be more like Naruko, the girl with glasses said. She mumbled. Why? Asked the wise man. I mean, I know Naruko is meant to do great things, but so am I. Karen, just Karen. I'm not a genius like her or skilled like Haku or good with weapons like them or Naruko's friend Tenten. All I have is a strong sense of smell, the ability to erase my chakra signature at the cost of not being able to use my chakra, and a unique wire skill that is geared toward combat but is still not very good. I also have a weird way of healing where, if I let someone bite me, they can use my chakra to heal themselves. However, it leaves permanent marks, so I haven't used it since I met Naruko. She talked about, all done. She said this as she hugged her legs and felt a little sad. She was glad, though, that Nimue was able to heal her bite marks. She was still learning magic, but it could take her years to master some of the many fields of magecraft and use them in battle. Naruko mostly focused on the shinobi arts and enhancement magecraft, but she wanted to learn more about her roots and become a master of it, so she would have to study it a lot more when she got back. Jiraiya just hummed. This girl was related to one of his apprentices, so he asked her, how's your chakra control? Not as high as Haku's, if that's what you want, but high enough. She replied. Then, why not try genjutsu? You can hide them in one and use it to sneak up on an opponent, or you could make them look real and it would look like you could call up more than one animal. The frog Sanin thought of. Karen listened to the wise man and said, I've always liked that. She smiled and said it. Then that's it. I've heard that Kurenai is really good at it, and I'm sure she'd love to teach you too. Jiraiya said with a smile. They all turned to look at Naruko, who had just popped her rubber ball. I did it. Cheered the blonde. Jiraiya shook his head. That girl was really good, so he asked his student, how did you do it? Don't forget my chakra chains. Well, they are made of dense chakra, so I stopped before the chains became real and just focused on the building up of dense chakra, and bam. Made it pop. The blonde talked back. Good job, Gaki. Guess what the third step is, he said as he took off his backpack and threw a regular balloon at her. He questioned. Put everything into the balloon. She said. Right, but you'll have to do that on the way, because we need to leave. Jiraiya said as he started walking to Tanzaku Gai. The girls started walking, and Naruko tried to do the third step, but it backfired on her. Ha ha ha. Jiraiya laughed at her, and Naruko ran at him, but he was already running away from her. Return here. Naruko yelled. Hey. Wait up. Karen yelled as she ran to catch up with them. Tanzaku Gai. When they got there, the castle was in ruins. Damn. Jiraiya muttered, wow, that's a lot of damage, I wonder who got who mad. Haim might be here. He said to himself, what? And then asked Karen in a serious voice, what? The redhead looked scared as she said, Tsum, there's leftover snake-faced chakra by the castle, as well as a cage-level signature and a Jonin-level signature a little ways away from the castle. Karen said. Orochimaru huh? Jiraiya said as he put his chin in his hands as if he were thinking. This is where it is. Why can't everything just be easy? Naruko stated out loud. That's how a shinobi Gaki's life is, never easy. Let's go now and see Haim. Jiraiya said to Karen as he told the other toad summoners to follow her. As they reached the end of their walk, they arrived at a bar. When they walked in, they saw a blonde woman drinking in the bar. She had a violet diamond on her forehead and a pretty big chest. A woman with black hair and a pig stood next to her. What are you doing here, Jiraiya? Asked the blonde with a bit of a slur. Just going to see the sights, you know all that. Jiraiya shrugged and sat down in the booth. Naruko and Karen sat down next to him. Wow, today I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. As Tsunade took another sip of her drink, she made a joke. What does that dirty animal want? Naruko snorted. Naruko asked in disgust. Just tell me what's going on in Konoha right now. Tsunade said. So, you've heard of Sensei, right? Jiraiya said solemnly. Yes, the snake said he was the one who did it. The healer said, I don't care one bit. It must not have felt too hot if it came to see you. Naruko spoke up. Tsunade looked at the girl through squinted eyes to get a better look at her and then turned to her fellow blonde. She stared right into the violet eyes of the blonde and thought to herself, those eyes look so familiar. Where have I seen them before? Who are your small friends? Jiraiya, don't tell me you're now stealing babies' cradles. Tsunade asked this question with a laugh because she knew it would make her old perverted teammate laugh. Jiraiya went pale when he heard the accusation. "Hime. You know me well enough to know that I'd never touch a girl younger than 18, he said this with anger. Karen and Naruko laughed at what the man was doing. Once Naruko stopped laughing, she said, "My name is Uzumaki Naruko, and it's a pleasure to meet my faraway family." With a soft smile, she said. Uzumaki. Tsunade said in surprise, "Wait, are you?" She was stopped. "Yes, I am the daughter of Uzumaki Kushina and Mito Oba Great Sama's great-granddaughter. This means that we are related." Naruko said this in a happy voice. When Tsunade heard the word, family, she had to swallow hard because the girl was pretty much her blood sister. "This is Uzumaki Karen," he said. Naruko said this when she first met the redhead. "Hi Tsunade-sama." Karen said in a shy way as she waved her hand. She knew 2 Uzumakis, or 3 if she counted herself, but she was first and foremost a Senju. Tsunade was thinking. Jiraiya smiled when he saw Tsunade trying to figure out what was going on. If he wasn't trying to get her back to Konoha, he would have laughed and said, "The Gaki, here's my apprentice." He said this as he ruffled Naruko's hair, and she hit his hand away while fixing her hair and giving him a dirty look. The wise man seemed to enjoy playing with her hair. Tsunade turned to Jiraiya and shook her head to clear her mind. "I thought you swore you wouldn't take on another apprentice after the last fool you taught killed himself?" She asked it as a joke about death. Jiraiya just made a mean face at her. Naruko laughed and said, "Finally, someone else thinks he's a fool, too." She spoke up. "Oh, no love for the great Yondaime?" Tsunade said with a bit of sarcasm in her voice. "He is the reason my whole life is a living hell." Naruko glared at her. Tsunade raised an eyebrow and asked, "How?" "Jinchuriki." Naruko said without care. Tsunade's eyes got big when she heard that. Damn, I guess that's why she hates Minato so much. She wondered, "Well, it's been nice talking to you, Jiraiya, but why are you really here?" She asked. "So you got right to the point, huh? You make me think of a different blonde." "Must be a family trait," the sage said as he looked at Naruko. He joked, "Also, you probably already know that Konoha no longer has a Hokage. So, you are the next Hokage because the council chose you." Tsunade snorted, "I may like gambling Jiraiya, but I'm no fool. If you came all the way here to tell me that, you're just wasting your time. I won't do it because it's just a stupid bet." As she took another sip of her drink, she said. "I mean, look at all the Hokage who have come before. Everyone had died so young except for Sensei, who died because of his own mistake. So, thank you not." She was done. "Really?" Naruko asked her. "Yep. Nawaki and Dan were nothing but fools, huh?" Naruko asked without meaning to. In an instant, Tsunade's mood turned bad. "What?" she asked in a serious voice. "Back in the Senju compound, I remember reading a few of your journals. Your younger brother, Nawaki, wanted to be Hokage so that he could protect Hashirama Oji legacy. Sama's your boyfriend, Dan, wanted to be Hokage so that he could protect Konoha. Since they wanted to be Hokage, just like you said, they must have been fools, right?" Naruko asked with a puzzled look on her face. "Outside." Tsunade spoke in a harsh whisper. I said outside." Tsunade yelled as she put food on the table. Naruko snorted, "Why? You lost because of what I said, and now you want to fight me? Are you really that immature, or are you just drunk? What?" asked the younger blonde. Tsunade grabbed Naruko before she could react and threw her out of the bar, breaking the door. The Stars Fall Down is a play from Fate, Zero. Naruko got up, cleaned herself off, and made a pair of cage bunshin on the spot when she saw a drunk and angry Tsunade come out of the bar. "You look like a kid who is throwing a fit." Naruko made fun of her relative's attempt to get a pay raise, and Tsunade ran at her like a drunken bull. As she let go of her weight seals and strengthened her body, Naruko jumped out of the way. Jiraiya and the others walked out of the room. "Calm down, Hime." Jiraiya said this to try to calm things down. Shut up, Tsunade said in a deadly calm voice. Yes, ma'am, Jiraiya said with some worry in his voice. Naruko charged at Tsunade, and before the female Sannin could defend herself, 3 chains with sharp blades shot out from the roofs of the buildings on either side of her. She tried to get away from them, but Naruko was already in front of her and hit her hard in the side of the ribcage. Tsunade fell a few feet and was putting her ribs back together as she glared at the blonde. 2 cage buncheons jumped down from the roofs, and the original one jumped down next to her. At least she was getting more sober. Tsunade had a thought. 3 of them came at her at once, and Tsunade punched the first one in her way. It blew smoke in her face for a moment while the other 2 tried to trap her between them. The Slug Princess saw them coming and went for the one on the right. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a copy. She moved just in time to avoid getting hit by the original and went for a punch with some power to show the little genin who was boss. Just before she hit Naruko with her fist, she didn't see Naruko's eyes turn red. The impact made a big crater, and when the dust settled, everyone's eyes grew wide. Naruko was blocking Tsunade's punch with a big orange tail coming out of her tailbone. The Uzumaki had red eyes, and her whiskers stood out more. Kyuubi said in a complimenting tone, "Nice job using the partial transformation kit." During her week off after the invasion, Naruko just smiled at how hard they were working. Huh, it looks like this fool got you good. Naruko said this is her new tail wrapped around Tsunade's arm, and she aimed a purple Rasengan at the older Kunoichi from the shadow of her body. When Tsunade saw this, her eyes got very big. Just in time, she grabbed Naruko's wrist and slammed it into the ground, making a crater. You taught her that move? Tsunade asked Jiraiya. Well, she's good, and since I'm her sensei, I had to teach her something, Jiraiya said with a shrug. He said it in a casual way. No matter how good she is, it doesn't matter. This jutsu can only be used by you and the Yondaime. Tsunade argued, but when she heard a little blonde laugh next to her, she turned and looked at her. Please, that jutsu will be easy for me to learn in no time. Naruko said it with a surety. Tsunade just looked at her and said, oh, okay, then let's make a bet. Naruko raised an eyebrow when her face went back to normal and Tsunade let go of her wrist, which had a bruise that was already getting better. What sort of wager? You can learn that jutsu in no more than 3 days, and here's what you get. She said this as she pulled the necklace with the green stone out of her shirt. What if I fail? Before you attack me, tell me why you called yourself a fool. Tsunade asked because she was now feeling more like herself. If you forgot what we talked about before this little fight, you would know that I, like Nawaki and Dan, want to be Hokage. But for me, it's not a dream, it's a reality, because I will get there no matter what. Naruko said this with a fierce look in her eyes. This made Tsunade's eyes widen, and she saw the ghosts of 2 people behind Naruko. Okay, if you win, you get the necklace and I become Hokage, but if you lose, you should stop trying to become Hokage. Tsunade said this in a very serious way. Naruko said, fine, and then turned around to get some rest before her training the next day. She stopped for a moment and turned her head to look at Tsunade. You should know that you shouldn't bet against an Uzumaki. As she kept walking, she said.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.